Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Beck Roberts, science writer and communicator here at Synthago, and I'm here again with Dr. Kevin Holden, our Vice President of Science.
Hi, everyone. Today we have the second in our video series where we interview experts about the recent FDA approval of Casgevy, a CRISPR-edited autologous cell therapy for the treatment of sickle cell disease.
Joining us today is Jimi Olaghere. Jimi is an entrepreneur, but he's also one of the first patients to have received Casgevy in the clinical trial for this therapy to treat his sickle cell disease. Some of you might be familiar with Jimi because he's actually spoken on the Synthago CRISPR Cuts podcast recently. And he goes into quite a lot of detail about his experience in the trial in that episode. So if you're interested in more of those details, you can check out episode 36 of the podcast.
Thanks so much for joining us, Jimi. Obviously, your experience in the Casgevy clinical trial makes you uniquely positioned to comment on the impact of this therapy on people living with sickle cell disease. Can you tell us what the approval of this incredible therapy means from a patient's perspective?
Yeah, thank you for having me. From a patient perspective, I think every patient is going to have a different experience with Casgevy or any gene-based therapy, but it's going to be overwhelmingly positive. For me specifically, it actually kind of reminds me of that famous quote. I think it was either Tim Ferriss or Gary Vaynerchuk about money, how money doesn't change you, it actually just reveals who you are. That's actually what Casgevy has done for me. It's actually given me the opportunity to be who I always wanted to be and who I thought, I should be. I went from literally being a shy, introverted gamer to this extroverted, high energy athlete. I roll nonstop, doing the type of work that I've always wanted to do, just based off of that infusion of Casgevy almost 3-4 years ago. It's completely changed my life and really giving me the opportunity to do what I've always wanted to do.
Wow, that's amazing to hear, Jimi. Thanks for sharing that. I was curious, I know you've spoken about this briefly on the podcast, but how did you actually get involved in the clinical trial to begin with?
Yeah, at a stage in my life, my quality of life had really just gone down the gutter. It was really bad. My parents were actually pushing me to find a solution to my health. They were really worried. My life was literally hanging in the balance. And I had actually given up myself, and they pushed me to find a solution. And in an attempt to appease them, I just Googled different therapies and something that could potentially change my life. I knew I didn't want to do a bone marrow transplant. Even though we did try for it and none of my sisters were a match, it just wasn't something that was of interest to me due to the recovery time, the risk of graft versus host, all that crazy stuff. And I landed on gene therapy, and it seemed like it would be something far in the future. And I'm like, okay, gene therapy, far in the future. I can tell my parents I've done something and they'll get off my back for a little while. And this gene therapy thing will never happen. I'll probably end up dying and it'll never come to pass. Unbeknownst to me, this has already been in the works. And 2 years later, I got an NPR article in my inbox. I did a Google alert with sickle cell and gene therapy. Anything comes together with those two keywords, I would get an alert in my inbox. And 2 years after, thinking or doing that research, I got this article by NPR about a woman called Victoria Gray, who was the first person to have her DNA edited to alleviate the symptoms of her sickle cell.
Yeah, Jimi, just kind of thinking a little bit about, every day people are enrolled in clinical trials. This was a clinical trial that really, had a lot more, I guess, kind of a microscope on it in terms of the whole world is really kind of interested to understand how this new technology, CRISPR, could be used in a gene therapy setting. How did that kind of, you mentioned about turning into more of an extrovert, how did that make you, I guess, feel to kind of know that there was this whole community that were kind of almost supporting you and rooting for the patients in this trial to do well? It kind of make you feel like you're never walking alone,
Yes. Honestly, for me, I just had no doubt, despite the tremendous amount of support, I had no doubt it was going to work. I think it's just the way my mindset is. I knew the way I looked at it was an investment in my future. That I'm going to go into this. It's going to be a long, arduous process, but at the end of it, I'm going to come out better for it. And I just went with that mindset all the way through. I think it took the better part of a year to complete the whole trial, but I was dead set on making sure it came out positive. And also, this is to circle back to my answer in regards to the therapy would affect other people differently. I almost feel like I kind of willed it to make it perfect, but also my lifestyle as well. I've kind of done things, my lifestyle makes the therapy actually even better. I eat fantastic, I eat great, I work out a lot, sometimes a little too much, so the way my lifestyle is set up helps this therapy actually perform better within my system.
Just as a follow-up question there, I guess when we talk about CRISPR therapies as scientists, we're always saying the goal is like a one-time treatment and it's curative. But as you just mentioned, this process for you was a whole year of your life. What advice would you give to other patients who are thinking about getting this therapy in terms of how to prepare for that process?
I'll try don't think about it too much. I think we tend to get in our own heads. It is long, it is arduous, but if you think about that, it's going to feel like that. Another thing that for me really helped me was the fact that I had sickle cell disease. That's probably the hardest thing I've dealt with. So if this, potential or hype, this person that we're talking about, if it's a disease or a patient that's suffering from a disease like sickle cell or any other heart disease, you can draw your experience from living with that disease to get you through the trial.
Jimi, now that Casgevy is approved for widespread use, would be interested to hear your thoughts on how you see sort of the cost of the therapy and its accessibility to patients, and how there might be a way to make this treatment equitable for a large number of patients in the world who could really use its help.
Yeah, it's the cost is sky high, as we all know, and right now I wouldn't consider it accessible. I'm very fortunate to have been able to qualify for this clinical trial that I got it for free. I believe the cost is 2 million or 3 million, I think 2.5. One thing I do know is that the manufacturers and regulators are aware of this gap, between the community that needs the disease, that needs a cure like this or a potential cure like this, and the cost of the cure. They're completely aware of that. So I think one thing that we need to do is give them time to fix that issue. Even myself included, I've been standing on this hill many times as to how expensive this medication or this one-time treatment it costs. So they're completely aware of it. Unfortunately, people might die, or if not, they would die or would still suffer while they're figuring out how to make it more accessible. One of the ways I know that, just from my own research and speaking to other people in biotech firms is in vivo. I think in vivo will solve all the logistical challenges that could help get the drugs get this medicine to people in regions where it's truly needed, like sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East. If you don't have to ship cells to a lab and all these other places, if you just one-time infusion, that solves it at all. So the advancement of the technology is what's going to actually fix the inaccessibility of the technology.
All right, so thanks so much for coming here to share your thoughts with us, Jimi. It's really great to hear from somebody who has firsthand experience living with both this terrible disease and also how it's tremendously impacted your life in a positive way to have the gene therapy and how CRISPR therapy in general can change lives.
Thank you for having me. It's really awesome that, you guys tell stories like this. I had the fortunate experience. I often talk about my experience reading someone else's story and how it completely changed my life. A few weeks back, I had the opportunity to meet someone who heard my story and completely changed her life. She went through the clinical trial. So kudos to you guys for putting things like this on. I think there are people out there that are keen to see what life is like after this treatment. You know, there's still a lot of fear and unknown, particularly with the sickle cell community, because they've typically had a charged relationship with the medical community. So when they see that, in fact, that people are getting these treatments and it is improving their lives, it encourages more people to sign up or do research and find out how to get it.
Thanks so much, Jimmy. It's been so great speaking with you. And also thank you to everyone else who's watching. Don't forget to stay tuned for our next video where we're interviewing another expert on the approval of Casgevy by the FDA. And we hope you're enjoying the video series so far. Bye for now.